Well, one other question rising from Berkshire Hathaway's annual meetup: who comes after Warren? Even as Buffett and Munger hold court in Omaha, Nebraska, questions about their succession plans still linger. Is Greg Abel quite able to keep Berkshire investors calm about the future? Well, joining us now to discuss is Stephen Check Capital Management President and CIO. Good to have you on the show here. So I want to first start with your takeaways from Berkshire here. I mean, they covered a lot of ground here: US, China, Apple, AI as well, and even a little bit on the bank runs as well. But I want to first get your takeaways as well.
Well, it was a very uplifting meeting. Remember, this is kind of the first real meeting since COVID. So since 2019, and it's just really good to see the crowd back, not having to do vaccine checks coming through. And Warren Buffett himself seemed just rejuvenated. It's like he almost went back and took a little bit of a speech class or something in the last couple of years, and there was the ums that were in the meetings the last couple of years just disappeared this year. It was just a really great vibe.
And we have to talk US-China relations because that's something that we had commentary on. And when you think of some of the biggest holdings of Berkshire, we mentioned Apple there, and really what's at stake here. Do you think that investors are going to heed that, though, and perhaps some of the powers that be in regulation would perhaps listen to this?
Well, I hope they would. They try to say it generally pretty diplomatically, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. Well, Charlie Munger is very, very straight out there in what he believes, but this is very common sense type of stuff that they're usually talking about, and they try to put it in a way where it doesn't become politicized and people do listen to it. So I would hope so.
And of course, when you talk about Apple, then also looking at the comparison with autos, we know that Berkshire was very hot on BYD, but then ended up selling half of its stake in the EV maker. As we try and sort of go through the tea leaves here, what should we take from that?
Yeah, well, they in general don't like real capital intensive businesses where there's a high risk of who's going to be the winner, and they of course you stated that clearly, and they behave that way. BYD, I would say, is a bit of an exception. Charlie Munger especially was just enamored with the CEO of BYD and what he's done over the years, and it was a huge home run investment for Berkshire. So it certainly is something that worked out very well. But in general, they're not betting on car companies. I think in this case, they were more or less betting on the CEO of a car company.
And of course, Berkshire does have its favorite child in Apple. But even when you look at the rest of the portfolio, especially GEICO and the turnaround story there, how surprising was that?
Well, GEICO was a nice turn, at least from the numbers, but things haven't completely turned at GEICO. And it was really kind of refreshing to hear from not just Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett this weekend. We also heard from Ajit Jain about GEICO, and he was very candid about the issues that still exist at GEICO and hope to be kind of cleaned up maybe in another year and a half. So while GEICO's combined ratio looked good this quarter, he did project that it's going to not be that good throughout the rest of this year, and they're just working their way back from kind of a little bit of a hole technologically wise that they got themselves into.
And of course, we knew that the issue of succession would come up. I mean, we didn't hear a lot from Greg Abel and Ajit Jain, but I mean, we did hear more from them than we usually do at the meetings. Talk about that dynamic. We heard Warren Buffett say, Greg Abel is going to be the man. But when they talked about this sort of bench of executives that could follow after them, he sort of dismissed that. He called it baloney because there's a very specialized set of skills that you need to be able to run a company the size of Berkshire.
Well, something that you didn't see unless you were at the meeting was there's a movie that takes place before the questions and answer period starts. And in this movie, which lasts for about 20 minutes, they interspersed 9 different clips of people asking questions about succession at Berkshire Hathaway. And these clips went back to 1994, 1995, 1996, early 2000s, and early 2010s. It's the same question, what happens after Warren Buffett, you're gone, and what's the risk and all that? And it's the same answer for nearly 30 years now. I mean, Berkshire Hathaway has a very deep culture with a very a huge number of talented managers. And they really just said, it could be on autopilot for the next 3 or 4 years after Warren Buffett departs the scenes, and hardly anyone would notice. Now, Greg Abel is a very able man, and one of his main jobs will be capital allocation. And you can look at what he did, frankly, with his own money just in the last year. He bought Berkshire Hathaway stock, about $100 million of Berkshire Hathaway stock with his own money. And he bought it at very succinct times last year when the stock was down around 275, and just about a month ago, it was just a little under 300. Now we're close to 330. He really picked some great points with his own personal money. And when he's in charge of Berkshire's money and looking at stock buybacks for Berkshire, for example, that's a big capital allocation decision. I'm sure he's going to do a great job.
You know, we'll all be watching closely. A big thank you there to Stephen Check Capital Management President and CIO. Thank you for your time this morning.